Hi, welcome back to Mel's Health. I'm Mel, and as always, it's lovely to have you here with me today. This has taken me a long time to make, so I do apologise if you saw part one a long time ago and were kind of waiting to see how my operation went. It did actually take me a lot longer to kind of feel healed from this operation, and then I kind of lost the drive as into making videos. So I'm here now, so better late than never. So this is part two of how my wisdom teeth operation went whilst being on blood thinners. So I left the last video, I think it had been about 3 weeks before the procedure. I'd had some consultations with the surgeon, the date was booked in, and I was given the date, but they don't actually give you any information about the time of the operation and where you need to be until the day before you need to be there. So you can't massively plan for the day itself. You don't actually know what time you're going to be there until the day before. They just call you, and that's what they did at this practice anyway. Due to me being on warfarin and the surgeon not wanting me to stop taking them throughout the whole operation period and the recovery period, he needed me to get an updated INR reading. So if you need any more information about blood thinners, or if you want to know why I am taking blood thinners for the rest of my life, there are a bunch of other videos on this channel that you can check out after this, and I'll also put some relevant ones, like the links, in the description. So for the week of the arranged operation, I went and got an up-to-date INR done, and then the day before the operation, the practice called me to tell me where I needed to be, at what time, and the nurse I spoke to on that day took my INR reading, and because it was fine, meaning that I was in a decent therapeutic range, she told me what my instructions were for the day of the surgery. So on the morning of my surgery, I would need to go and collect my prescription before going to the clinic for the operation. And I think they've done this because over time they've realised that it is extremely difficult for someone after having the operation to go and collect a prescription. So my prescription was for amoxicillin, which is the antibiotic, and then I had 2 different painkillers to interchange with each other, some Tylenol 3 and some Tramacet. And then the last thing I had, which was extra because I am on blood thinners, was tranexamic acid, and that is a medication that controls bleeding by helping blood to clot faster. Now you might be thinking, well, that's not exactly what I want, being me, but you have to remember that throughout this entire process, I'm still taking my warfarin at the same dose at the same time every day. And this liquid that they prescribe is just something that I'm going to be swishing my mouth out with, you know, getting it onto where the wounds are and then spitting it back out. And it just helps clots to form, so where the holes are in your gums can kind of heal a bit quicker. She also told me not to ingest anything for up to 12 hours before the operation. So I think I was scheduled at like 10 in the morning, so I couldn't have anything from 10 p.m. the night before. And then they make sure that you have a plan for getting to and from the clinic, because they release you when you're still kind of out of it, like mildly, so you definitely cannot drive yourself home, and I think there are certain forms of public transport that are not going to be the most ideal in that situation too. So lucky for me, I have my fiance who he took the day off. He could drive me to and from the clinic and get me home safely, kind of look after me a bit. But they did say to me that if you don't have anyone that can be with you on the day, they like to make sure that you've arranged like a private car or a cab or a healthcare service who will come and collect you once the operation's done and see you into your home safely once it's finished. Lastly, on this call, they do take your credit card details because they won't charge you until after the procedure is done. But like I said, when they kind of roll you out after the op into the reception area in your wheelchair, you're not really with it. So you're not kind of physically in a state to then go and pay for something. So they just have your payment details ready so they can charge you at the necessary point. So then I go and get the op, and this part is probably the most straightforward. If you watch part 1 of this story, you'll know that I had some awkward wisdom teeth. The surgeon did get out everything that he wanted to get out. They had to do a lot of drilling, they did tell me, and they said that it wasn't the easiest extraction that they ever had, but it was quite funny that they said that, because when I woke up from the general anaesthetic, I did ask about drilling, because I had this memory of hearing a lot of drilling. Even though I was under the general anaesthetic, completely knocked out, I can still kind of hear that sound when I think about it now. And they did say, yeah, it took quite a bit of drilling, and one of the teeth was particularly awkward for them to do the extraction on. But all did go well. The surgeon was happy with everything that he got out. So at this point, I'm kind of like bandaged up. You know, they kind of pack your like tooth areas full of gauze just to stop for the bleeding and all that. I was kind of drowsy as hell and just being wheeled out in a wheelchair, and you got a big old fat face, so you're not having the best time. They then give you a little release package, so it has all the paperwork in that you're going to need, that has like aftercare instructions and stuff to do with like the medications you've been given, as well as that hefty bill that they've just charged you for too. And then there's a whole bunch of like fresh gauze in there, because you're going to have to change the ones that are in your mouth within like the hour or so. They give you some like chunky plastic syringes, because when you start eating, or if you go home and you like maybe drink some soup or something, every time you have something that goes in your mouth, you need to clean out those wounds. So you have to fill these with like warm salty water, and then just like get out any kind of crumbs or anything that might have got stuck within like the actual holes or like in between your teeth, because you don't want to get any infections from letting stuff get stuck there. And then finally they actually give you the teeth that they removed in a little envelope as well, just as like a little keepsake, which is just what you want. But here's a picture of mine, just for reference, so you can see kind of how big the teeth are that they remove, because everyone's always just like, oh, teeth are so much bigger when they come out. You don't actually realize how big teeth are. And you can see the one that's in pieces because they had to remove chunks at a time with all that drilling. So then the recovery, the hard part. My other half drove me home, and I looked and sounded like this in the car ride home.
You're influencing Mel.
And from there, things just got worse. And I have to say that the recovery process from these wisdom teeth extractions was excruciating. I cannot emphasize how much pain I was in constantly. Like if I didn't stick to the every 4 hours of the painkillers that I was given, I was like beyond agony. Even like going to bed at night, I would take a pill before going to sleep. I would know that it would kick in and it would like send me off, but literally like clockwork, like 3 to 4 hours later, the pain would literally just wake me up immediately, and I was in so much pain. I have to like get up and like take another pill and wait and suffer it out until it started kicking in again, so I could get some more sleep for the next 3 or 4 hours before I woke up again feeling terrible. That kind of lasted for about 3 days of the constant debilitating pain before it slightly subsided. On top of that as well, you're not eating properly, you know, so you're kind of exhausted as well. I was having a lot of smoothies, you know, you're kind of like sipping stuff where you can. You can't have any hot drinks, even for that like comforting feeling. And you can't use a straw for anything either, so you're really trying to like sip carefully. You can't use a straw because the kind of sucking motion from the straw might pull any of like the healing clots and stuff out of the wounds that you've got. So you could end up being prone to more infection, you could get dry socket, you could have a longer healing time, so it's just not something you want. So no straws, just sipping. So that carries on, and I'm not going to bore you with every tiny little detail of the recovery, but one thing that I'll mention is that once I did have the pain kind of subside a bit and I wanted to start eating a bit more solid food, and I had a bit more movement in my mouth, would have been about maybe the 4 to 5 day mark, I noticed that I definitely had a lockjaw on like the right side of my jaw. So that meant I couldn't open my mouth wider than like a finger or two. So it was like I could not push my mouth open physically wider than what I just showed you. And this happens a lot when your jaw goes through a bit of trauma. So it's really common in wisdom teeth surgery, because during the surgery itself, your jaw has had like that hyperextension for a prolonged period of time while they're removing the wisdom teeth. So your jaw muscles kind of get inflamed, and that's what causes lockjaw. So at this point I called the clinic, because initially when I left they did say that at about the 4 day mark you will noticeably see some improvement, but at this point I was still in a hell of a lot of pain, and I also couldn't open my mouth. So I spoke to some people there. They kind of checked in with the doctor about what would be best for me, and he suggested that I go and get some Robaxacet, which is probably a complete North American kind of branded name, but it's basically an over-the-counter muscle relaxant that you can just get off the shelf. In this part of the world there's also like Robaxacet like Plus or Pro, like the next model up, that you can get, but that one does actually have like anti-inflammatories in it, like an ibuprofen part, and if you are on blood thinners you will know that we're not allowed to take any NSAIDs while we're on blood thinners, so no anti-inflammatories. So I went out and I bought just some of the regular one. And they also told me to get a heat pack and make sure that I'm holding the heat pack on there, and then doing some like stretching exercises by trying to open my mouth wider each day until kind of the movement comes back. So I did that, and then within like a few weeks I had like full motion of my jaw again. It kind of slowly opened up more and more as I was trying to eat and then doing those exercises as well. So in a nutshell, I highly do not recommend getting wisdom teeth surgery unless you absolutely need it, because it was horrendous. On top of having to pay a pretty penny for the whole process, the pain and discomfort was just through the roof, like absolutely terrible. And I'm still dealing with a couple of the effects now, even though it's 4 months on. I haven't been back to a dentist yet, so I don't want to comment on it completely. But I said in part 1, there was obviously a concern around my teeth being quite close to nerves. And it seems like it's gone successfully, and the doctor did avoid the nerve. I haven't got a numb jaw or chin or lip or anything like that. But ever since the surgery, and I've kind of recovered a bit more, this back tooth that they took out on the bottom left side of my jaw has been like a constant like tingling irritation. And it kind of goes up and down in severity. So I will get back to a dentist at some point to kind of see what's going on in there. But you know, overall I got away with not having a lot of nerve damage from all of the trauma that went on in my jaw that day. So I think it was pretty successful. I just need to go and actually see what is still currently going on for me, because it's 4 months later, and I mean I can feel it right now as I'm filming this. It's still something that I notice every single day. So to end, I'm just going to show you the prices that I had to pay in BC, Canada, and I have extended health benefits. So these are the actual prices I paid with my coverage. So you can kind of take them with a slight grain of salt. And I know that'll make more sense if you're actually from BC and Canada, but for the final total, I've also done some calculations so you can see the conversion rate for GBP and USD as well, for those of you in America and those of you in the UK. So I had the initial consultation with the surgeon, the CT scan of my jaw, I had the wisdom teeth extraction operation, and then my prescription for the antibiotics, the Tylenol 3, the Tramoset, and the tranexamic acid. So this is my total, and you can see that in the different currencies as well. Thank you very much for watching this video, and do stick around if you found any of it interesting, or if you are looking for more information around anything to do with pulmonary embolism recovery and anything to do with being on blood thinners, because in the next few weeks I have got some scans coming up and doctor's appointments, because it has been a year since my last review. So I've got a CT scan booked in, and I will make a video on what life is like coming up to kind of almost the 2-year point from being diagnosed. So yeah, please subscribe to the channel, because it does help push the content out to people who might be in need of this information. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.